live from the Bronx, episode 32. We are the podcast that celebrates Bronx creators and change makers. And I'm your boy, KB.
What is going on, beautiful people? It is your boy, Jay. Y'all already know, before we jump into episode 32, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with everything we have going on. We are popping across all media platforms, including BronxNet now. Shout out to them. And y'all already know the saying, tell a friend to check us out.
So today, we have a very dope episode. We are going to be sitting down and kicking it with an educator. She's also a singer. You might have recently seen her on the Shade Room killing the Deborah Cox challenge. Please, please, please make some noise and virtual noise for Dominique Mejia in the building, y'all.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I feel good. I feel really good today.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, thank you for being here with us. And like we were talking before we started hitting record, I first saw you with the Deborah Cox challenge, which we're going to talk a little bit about. Because that actually is one of my favorite like songs, like 90s ballads.
Really?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I'm into like a lot of 90s stuff. Jay could tell you. So when I saw you killing it, I kind of went down the rabbit hole and like saw them making the band stuff and all this cool stuff that we're gonna talk about. But I think we're gonna kind of start from the beginning and get to know a little bit more about who you are before we talk about some of that other cool stuff as well.
Okay.
Facts. So the first question we always start off with, because we want the audience to get a chance to learn a little bit more about who it is we're interviewing, right? So this question that I'm going to ask you is really vague. Interpret it as you choose, and feel free to be free with it, right? So this question is: who are you, and how do you identify?
Who am I? I am Dominique. Dominique Renee, maiden name Young, married name Mejia, from Highbridge. And I am a Black girl from the Bronx. I am an educator. I'm a protector. I'm a sister. I'm a wife. And most recently, I am a mama. And I'm a mama of two twin girls, two twins, obviously, a set of twin girls named Nola and Naila, and they just turned a year a week ago.
Happy belated birthday to the twins.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you obviously talked about your connection to the Bronx and very specific. Shout out to Highbridge. So what was your experience like growing up in the Bronx? What was it like growing up in the Highbridge section specifically?
You know what? I feel like I grew up with a lot of joy. I it's interesting because it's in this process, so we'll talk about this, but I'm founding and opening and leading a school next year. And I've had to do a lot of soul searching and learning about myself and my community in order to be able to do that. And I feel like what I've learned is that when it was just Dominique in Highbridge, like this kind of tunnel view of things, it was gold. As a kid, I have all of these fond memories of playing double dutch in the streets, playing all those little kid games on the sidewalk and skating, putting on roller skates. I had to use my cousin's skates. And so, do y'all remember those Fisher Price skates where you had to have the sneaker and you put the sneaker in the skate?
Yep. The yellow and blue joints. I remember.
Come on. And so my cousin, I was, staying with my auntie off and on, and my grandma, and I had to share my cousin's Fisher Price skates, and I always got the left one, because who wanted the left one if you could only have one? And it's just a just really funny, fond memory. But yeah, I remember just being surrounded by a community of love, Black and brown people. Like, my both of my parents are from Highbridge, born and raised. And so, and they were very, very young. They were in middle school when they had me. And so it was like this, I was just, I guess you would say well known, maybe because of that, but because my dad was like a dancer who was all over the place. He's a professional background dancer. And so people in our neighborhood knew him. And my mom was doing a lot. She's also a singer, and just, you know, it was a community feel when I was growing up. Obviously, I mean, like there was also a lot going on, you know.
Yeah.
I was scrapping in the schoolyard. I was all of that. I was fighting and doing all those things too. But yeah, there was a lot of joy. I just have a lot of fond memories, especially of when I was very, very young in Highbridge. And I feel like it's really not until I left Highbridge or left the Bronx that I started getting these images of my community that I didn't have prior. Like the negative, when people talk about the negative images of the Bronx, that wasn't in me until I stepped away from Highbridge and stepped away from the Bronx. That's when you start hearing those things that make you be like, is where I'm from a bad place? Because I didn't have that when I was a kid.
I love that, right? Because what we're talking about is a sense of community. And despite what was going on, there was still love, there was still joy, there was still laughter, family, community building, all of these beautiful things that people don't think about when they talk about the Bronx. And it's funny, this relates to a conversation I was having yesterday with a group of advisors, where we were talking about the power of storytelling, right? So, and like, how do we start to shift those bigger narratives that are created about the Bronx by highlighting stories like this, which is the beauty of the podcast that we've started, because the ultimate goal is to say, like, yeah, y'all think about all these different things, but we're going to give you a different perspective from the people who are living the everyday life of the Bronx.
Come on and say it. So
that is beautiful. And that was my experience. I grown up in the South Bronx, right? Kevin and I will always get into conversations about what our upbringings were like, and the joy that we had, and all the culture and the fun stuff and hip hop, right? It's a big part of who we are today. So thank you for getting personal with us and sharing that story. Kev, it looks like you wanted to jump in real quick.
Yeah, I was just gonna be able to say I can relate to what you said about not necessarily realizing some of the other things until you kind of stepped away from it. So it wasn't until I went to college, and I actually went to college in the Bronx. I went to Fordham, and there were a bunch of people who were not from the Bronx who had all of these like negative stereotypes and thoughts and feelings about the place that I called home and grew up. And I was like, this is how people view the Bronx. Interesting.
But I didn't realize how much that was impacting me. You know, at that age, you're just like, somebody said something about you, you got to come back. But you're not like, dang, well, I go over here and people talking about where I'm from. And then I go to boarding school and people are making it seem like, you escaped from this horrible place. Then you go to college, right? I went to a PWI, shout out to the University of Maryland, College Park, go Terps. But even there, right, you just get into these spaces, the further and further you get away, the more you keep hearing this narrative that it wasn't until adulthood that I'm like, that was not my narrative. Wow. Like that was pushed onto me by the media, the TV, the other environments. And so it's just interesting.
Yeah, I totally get that. It wasn't your narrative. And it's like, I don't want to claim that because that's not my experience. And it's happened in different spaces for me as well. I've been to Camden, New Jersey, and I was doing kind of like a cultural immersion trip out there. And if you don't know anything about Camden, Camden is rough, right? So just in terms of murders, in terms of just all of these different things, and like with anywhere, there's dope people and stuff like that, but it's definitely a lot of crime, so while we were out there doing work, they were like, wait, you're from the Bronx though? And they had all these questions about being from the Bronx, but I'm like, but you're from like Camden. So it's always really interesting, like how people view the place that you're from. So
can I also just add something to that really quickly, right? Because it's interesting, two things that you both said just around that narrative piece, right? One is, Kevin, you're saying that as Dominique is sharing her story, like that's not a narrative you want to claim. And Dominique is saying, well, that's not a narrative I knew I claimed, right? It's like something that's been pushed on to me and I've adopted those notions, which could be harmful. And until I stop to say, let let me actually rethink this narrative and how I want to reclaim my own narrative, right? So I just wanted to emphasize on that, because although it was a subtle like conversation, and reaction is much deeper than what it sounds like, right?
That's why we call him the professor. He's always contextualizing everything. We
I
appreciate you
love
for that,
it.
Jay. So let's talk about your work in education. So I know you are, so Kipp has been a huge part of your life. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about, I guess you went to the Kipp for middle school and elementary school, or for elementary school?
No, yeah, huge part of my life is an understatement. So when Kipp first started, when it was founded, it was only middle school. So pretty much all through the 90s until the like late 90s going into the 2000s, it was two schools, one in Houston, one in the Bronx, right? And so I was, and what they call an original Kippster, I was a part of the like founding class. So the first graduating class out of Kipp Academy in the Bronx, middle school, I was in that class. And so I, you know, all these years later, you're now like, wow, I was a part of history. Like, you know, I didn't know how Kipp would pop off. And I know even the founders at the time had no idea that we would grow to be, I mean, over 200 schools. I want to say over 225 schools at this point across the country, serving basically hundreds of thousands of kids. And so, yeah, you know, the story goes, I was finishing fifth grade at my local elementary school in Highbridge. And I was, I mean, very, very high performing academically, right? We're talking like valedictorian level, but Dominique was in trouble all the time, y'all. I mean, yeah, I was in trouble a lot of fighting, and just, I was into a lot of stuff. And so, my grandma, who I was living with my grandma and my dad's mom, shout out to Grandma Linda, and she was just like, what am I going to do with this girl? I feel like, you know, she had this idea. She saw my potential. Like, you know, she's going places if I can get her to chill out and not be in trouble and not get into the wrong things. And so my auntie, her sister, called her and said, you know, my Aunt Laureen said, you know, I put my son in this program that just started. It's called Kipp, and, you know, all these things. And so they reached out, or we reached out. I don't remember how it worked out, but the founder and the founding math teacher and the school principal came to our apartment in Highbridge. Like, these two white men came sitting on my grandma's couch, making her promises about how I was going to college and all of these things. And she was sold. I mean, I remember I was kind of like, Saturday school, like, what are y'all talking about? It was a really long school day, and I just was like, okay, whatever, like, we'll see what happens. But my grandma was just kind of like, okay, this is this new opportunity. I'm going to try this thing. And for me, it worked out. I went there. I was, like I said, a part of the first graduating class. And at the time, there were no Kipp elementary schools. There were no Kipp high schools. And so the goal was to support students in getting into the best high schools across the city, right? And so the first tier was boarding school was a part of that. So like the highest performing, okay, cool. Who's getting into prep for prep, ABC, Oliver, all of those type of programs, which again, I got into. The specialized high schools had a program, what was it called? MSI, Math Science Institute, where you do this kind of prep to take the test to get into Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, and Stuyvesant, which I know there are more of them now. I can't even keep up.
Yeah, there's 9 now.
Crazy, right? So there were 3 when I was in middle school, which ages me. And so did all of that. And as a singer, right, I've been singing since I was 2 years old. I know we'll talk about that, but I also auditioned for like Talent Unlimited, LaGuardia. I got into those schools. And so I had options, which was awesome. But ended up going away to boarding school. I got a full scholarship, and ultimately my family, we all were just kind of like, best option for Dominique. Let's, you know, make sure that she's in this environment where she's not going to get in so much trouble. And so Kipp, right? Like, when I was a kid, it was like, we to and through college, like, we stick with you. That's what makes us so different from other schools. We're going to stick with you to and through college. And what I will say is my personal experience was that, you know, I trouble followed me, and I did get in trouble when I was in boarding school too. And they were there, you know.
I'm noticing a theme, Dominique.
Yeah, we can talk about that if you want to. But yeah, so like so, you know, there for me throughout, right? Like where you have the advisor, the counselor, the you know, there at my high school graduation, there at my college graduation type of thing. And it was really a part of me. I did have a pretty awesome experience as a Kipp student. And I know there's controversy and thoughts around charter schools and all of those things, but I have to speak to my own personal story, and that was mine, right? So how did I continue along with this program? When I graduated college, you know, we were in the middle of a recession. And I had my first job out of college. I'm not gonna name the organization. I'm not gonna put them out there, but it was in the corporate world. I was a marketing manager, and I hated it. Oh my gosh! I learned very early that Dominique is not made for that field, right? If I'm gonna be happy. And so I start searching for jobs. Oh my gosh, searching for jobs for months and months and months. Couldn't find anything. And so the co-founder of Kipp, who was also my school principal, was an advisor to me, a mentor to me, right? So I get on the phone and be like, "Oh, I need advice. What am I gonna do?" And we joked about, I had always said, you know, one day I'm gonna get rich. I'm gonna get so rich, and I'm gonna give all this money back to Kipp. And I can't remember if it was him or me who was kind of like, well, you know, you could give back by being a part of the organization now. Like you can join the organization. Because it was kind of like, okay, when you get out of college and it's the middle of a recession, the reality hits that you ain't about to get rich. So there was a Kipp DC by that point. And my little brother had gone through Kipp DC. And so I knew the founder there, reached out to her, and thought that they had a marketing position at their headquarters. And so I'm like, oh, cool, I'll do marketing. Interviewed with her, and she was like, girl, you're a teacher. You're going to teach. There's no marketing for you. You are going to teach. And that was the beginning of my career almost 15 years ago now. Yeah. So I spent 2 years at Kipp DC as in the ELA world, 6th grade, and then came back home to New York City, and I was at a Kipp school in Harlem for almost 10 years. Same ELA world, eventually became a dean, and now I am what we call a Fisher Fellow. I'm doing a Fisher Fellowship, or a fellowship to found and lead the next Kipp school in the Bronx, the next Kipp middle school in the Bronx. So we're talking full circle. I believe in the power of storytelling in a way that I can't even explain, right? When you think about the narratives of my people, right? Slaves, and how our entire history has not been written in the textbooks. It is so important that we uphold storytelling, we uphold narrative in that way, because it holds so much truth that just in our society is not valued enough. And so I'm so glad you brought that up, because I believe in storytelling, and I believe in it as a way of connecting people. When I think about everything happening in our world and how horrible things feel right now, storytelling is a part of healing in my mind. So thinking about my own story, right? Again, I tell this rosy like story about how my trajectory, but I think about, again, the messaging, right? I had such good experiences in some ways, and in other ways, you are hearing indirectly, oh, where you're from is a bad place. Oh, you got to get away from that place. Oh, you're escaping. You're one of the good ones, right? You're so smart. You're so this, you're so that. We gotta get you out of there to do great things. And that's the wrong message. That's just the wrong message. You know, we used to have this thing where I remember it was always like, we'll talk about college, and we talk about Yale, and we'll talk about Harvard, and we're not talking about Howard and Lincoln and Hampton, and like things that are just like, if I got to be able to find a way back to my people. It's just the point. And I think that was the thing missing in my education throughout, like from middle school all the way through grad school. That was what was lacking. This idea around pride, affirmation and celebration of just the things that already exist. What is already amazing about where I come from, about my people, about my hood, about the Bronx, about Highbridge? What's already great? Can we start there by identifying all the amazingness? Then we can talk about, okay, but we got issues too, and we got to work on change. So in my mind, that's what we need to be doing with our students, is letting them know, hey, this is what's amazing about you and about where you're from and about what, your culture and your heritage and your history. And now, as a part of your education, you need to learn the areas that need changes, so that you can turn around when you have the education that you need and be the change. And I feel like that wasn't the messaging I got. It was like, get up and get out and go do. And that's how you do well by your people. But the truth is, if every high performing student from the Bronx leaves the Bronx, what's going to happen to the Bronx, right? If nobody's coming back and being the politicians and being the educators and being the business owners, what's happening to our communities? And so the other piece I will say is, in my world as an educator, I feel like I rarely found people who were just like me. I felt like I found other educators, and this is obviously not, I can't speak to everybody and every experience, but other educators who were people of color, but they weren't from the same socioeconomic background as our students, right? Or people who were just like I'm an African American, right? Like, I'm a Black woman from New York City, all the way up to my grandparents. And my great-grandparents came from the Carolinas. And so I know that I'm a direct descendant of slaves. And I feel like what I was finding in education was middle class and up educators of color in these environments, and I'm not even talking about the plethora of white people, right? We know that's the majority, and that's problematic in itself. But then also, like, folks came directly from the Caribbean, or folks that came directly from, not directly, but you understand what I'm saying? And so I was kind of like feeling like alone in that, and wondering, I felt like with every accomplishment, I was seeing less and less just Black people who came from where I came from. And it became this bigger people of color. Oh, we have a staff that have so many people of color. But I was realizing, when I looked at myself as a Black woman who came from poverty, wasn't seeing that enough. And that's, so boom. So that's another one of my missions, is to make sure that if I'm up here, my arms are everywhere to get my people right here with me.
And so let's talk about that, right? Like, we are saying right now, in today's time, DEI work, right? And when I say DEI, for those of you who may not be familiar, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Really popular field across all industries at the very moment. But what's important to highlight that Dominique is saying is that many of us define diversity as just representation. Like, we got people of color in the company, the school, or the organization. But what in the world does that actually mean, right? Because we can have people of color across the entire color spectrum, right, working in one particular place. But if they are all like-minded and believe in Eurocentric ideology, then are we diverse? Right? That's the question. And so it's important to really define what this means for you. So thank you for sharing that, because it's important. Like, we really got to think about this stuff. We got to do this the right way and be intentional about how we do it. And I'm gonna shut up now and give it to Kev.
Don't shut up, bro. I think you was preaching, bro. I think that is super valid, right? There's another saying, like, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, right? So just because someone looks like you does not mean that they have the same ideals, the same anything. So I think you make a really good point, Dominique. So I guess I also wanted to know, and I think you started to touch on it already. So tell us about, I guess, your vision for the school that you're opening up in the Bronx. I know it's a Kipp school. What's that like? What's happening? What are your thoughts? We want to know.
Yeah. This is it's such a scary time because we're in the middle of a pandemic. But I did talk about it. I mean, the bottom line is, there are a lot of, like, I will not act like I don't have pride and belief in our organization, in education in general. I got to believe in the potential future outcome of education if I'm going to stay in it, right? Like to make sure that I'm being a part of that change. And so there are a lot of areas where I think that our organization has done well. And I think in opening a school, it's like, okay, Dominique, where are the areas of change? Just like I said, when we are leaving our communities for colleges and high schools and all of those things, when you come back, you're like, yes, there's the joy here. There's all the awesome things. And then what are the things that need to change? And so I think at the base, at the core, students, kids deserve an impeccable education. And I'm talking about academics, right? Like our babies deserve to be able to read, write, and do math at rates that are impeccable, because that's their right. That's the right of really all human beings in my eyes, right? And so that's the base. And it's like interesting because I don't talk a lot about that. Like, you know, I feel like when you hear people talk about school academically, this is what we're going to do academically. Look, that's why we're here. But what are we going to do different? And I think when I look at Kipp's success over time, you know, there have always been the kind of rates around how we are having a lot more students heading off to college. And then the area where we're working on always is making sure they're finishing, right? We're seeing that like so many, 99% of our high schoolers are going on to college. And then the lower number is ones who are actually finishing. And so there are a lot of different theories and a lot of research that's going into what's happening, what can we do to make sure that it's through, right? One of those pieces of research is not just to focus on college, right? I think college is important personally, right? But there are so many, I mean, back in the days when there was vocational training and all of these different things, there are options. And I think one of the most beautiful things I've seen happen within my organization is an adjustment to the mission to talk about supporting kids, one, with their families and with the community, right? In leading happy, choice-filled lives, period. Right? Because that can mean so many things. At the end of the day, we want to ensure that when you become a grown-up, right, and you had your education, you have options to live how you want to live in a way that's going to bring you satisfaction and bring you happiness and hopefully peace as well. So I think the one thing that's the most important to me in founding my school is this idea around culture and community, right? So the first thing is, this is not my school. It's not my school, right? Like I'm founding it, I'm leading it, but there's an entire community that the school is going to sit within, and it's our school. Like these are, I like to call them my babies, and I don't even know, you know, if that's appropriate. Like, you know how people talk about what's PC and what's not, but man, the way that I love kids, I feel like my grown student alumni, I'm still like, oh my God, my babies. That's just who I am. But they're really not my babies. They are someone else's babies. And that someone else, that mom, that dad, that grandma, that guardian, those people should have a voice. They should have a say, right? I want to know what they believe is missing from the community. I want to know what they believe their kids should be learning and should be how they should be being enriched and all of those things. That is so important to me. And culture, heritage, right? You know, we get into this thing because it's education and we have so much going on where we're like, oh, we serve all the Black and brown kids, or we serve all the Black and Hispanic kids, or you know, where it's like, man, you know how many countries are represented in the Hispanic community? We gotta dig in so that everybody is, when you talk about DEI, everybody is included. And so I really believe if we work to instill pride and joy and knowledge in students' identities, cultures, and communities at this middle school level, because that's where I'm doing it, I think that will change the outcome. When they get to colleges, right, and you step out of your community, because remember, I told you, when I stepped out of the community, that is when it was like, whoa, where I'm from is this bad place. And I'm grateful that I came from a family that was like, girl, You better be proud to be a Black woman. You better be proud to be, but everybody doesn't have that. And I think as a part of education, that should be happening, right? Where we are literally exploring, celebrating, affirming culture and community at every step. So that when our kids step onto these college campuses or these high school campuses, they're like, you can say what you want to say about the Bronx, but this is what I know about myself, about my community, about my heritage, and that we should last. I know I talk a lot, y'all. Y'all got to just stop me when you want to. The last thing I'm thinking about is ensuring that my students are armed to fight. And when I say fight, I'm not talking about getting out in the streets and being violent, but to fight against injustice, right? The last part in that DEI is the J. And who's going to do it, right? Us three, us four, we're grown-ups already. And so we are supposed to be supporting and grooming the future leaders of our communities. And so I feel like that piece is missing. Students have to know, no, it's actually a part of your job to me, to find whatever your way is. What is your way of being on the front lines of justice? Right? And so for some of our students, they'll be the politicians, they'll be the this, they'll be the that. But that starts now. It shouldn't be that you take a Black studies class in college and then you're like, man, whoa, I didn't even know that the Black Panther Party did all of those things. No. It should be starting now. They should know all the amazing things, like I said, about where they're from. They should know the rough stuff too, that's happening in their community and in the world at large, so that they can start to discern and start to be like, okay, this is where I want to focus, right? This is the thing. I'm really, I want to make sure I'm fighting for women's rights. That could be one student that's just like planting that seed at this age for them to get into adulthood and be ready to, within their own communities, be the change.
Yo, Dominique, your school sounds so dope and super awesome. The community school, not your school, the school that that you are founding, right? So a couple things that I heard in there really quickly, and then we got to get to this music stuff because I have so much.
I know, I'm having so much fun with y'all.
Well, thank you. So the culture piece definitely spoke to me because I have students from a whole bunch of different regions and places and stuff like that. And particularly some of my students who are from the continent, right? I'll ask them where they're from and they'll say that they're from Africa. I'm like, no, where are you from, right? And they're so used to giving some of these white teachers that answer Africa and just being like, all right, you're from Africa. Like it's just one monolith, right? No, it is a continent with lots of countries, right? So being able to kind of really speak about your culture. So I'm really excited for your students, right, when the school opens, because I think being able to speak to your culture is really important, right? Because it's different, right? The choice-filled lives, I really appreciated that piece around community. I think we have to realize as educators that we don't have all of the answers, right? I think sometimes we think that we know what's best for people, but no, right? Choice-filled lives. So I love that you said that, right? Realizing that people have the autonomy to kind of make the best decision for themselves. And I've changed my time. I used to call myself a college counselor. I call myself a post-secondary readiness counselor, right? Because again, it's that choice piece, right? What is it that is going to make the most sense for you? And the last piece was like the fight against injustice, right? Like what you said about why does it take you getting to college or taking like a Black studies course for you to kind of realize that things are not right. Yo, I can identify with that, because the only reason why as a kid I knew that things weren't right is because my mom had me reading certain things, right? But none of it came from the school, really. Like none of it came from the school.
That's real.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about all the things that you said. I think it's going to be really dope, and I look forward to hearing more. Now for this music stuff. So I'm kind of geeking out a little bit because I was definitely a huge fan of like Making the Band, and I actually remember the scene where you killed it, and Diddy seems like a really hard person to impress, but he was super impressed. So I guess before we even get to Making the Band, I guess tell us a little bit about how music has been part of your life and part of your journey.
Yeah. Music is everything to me. That period. I have one tattoo and it's music related. So I come from a very musical family. My mom sings. My dad sings. I mean, just so much music. And so I just remember, I mean, I've been singing since probably remember singing since I was like 2 years old. My family tells all these stories about me knowing all the lyrics and thinking I knew all the lyrics to like Karen White's Superwoman, aging myself again. I don't care. Okay. And just, I'm so grateful that that happened in the 90s. Whoo, I'm so grateful that it happened in the 90s because that was when the best music was happening. And so, yeah, I feel like I sang at my maybe kindergarten graduation. Like it's that all the way back then. I was that kid at the graduation ceremony, at the talent shows. I probably did every talent show that existed in the Bronx at the time. Shout out to Ruby, my Aunt Crystal, my Uncle Dave, and my Aunt Crystal, right? My Uncle Dave and his wife's really good friend, right? Her name was Ruby. Every weekend, I mean, they would pick me up from my grandma's house and take me to whatever talent show, whatever was advertised in the Bronx. We were there, and it was awesome. I don't, there was no goal. I think it was just like we loved music, and so I did Apollo Kids when I was younger. I was on TV singing Jennifer Holiday, and I'm telling you, I'm not going. And so it was just a thing that was in me. And then I told you I went to boarding school. So when I went to boarding school, there was like this a cappella group that they were on fire. Like they were really good. And again, I told you I came out of the Bronx with a lot of confidence. So I'm out here thinking like, ain't no way I'm not getting. I surely didn't get in freshman year. And it was really funny. And I shout out Mr. Berryman or Barrymore. I can't remember. I think his name was Berryman. He was the choir director at the school, and he was over the a cappella groups. And he was like, girl, you ain't got no control over that little voice. He was like, you can sing, because I had no training. I've never had vocal training ever. So it was just like me and the family and, singing. And so he said, first, you can join my choir. And I had no interest in that. They were singing in every language but English. They were doing all the classical. And I was, I'm out here trying to sing my Mary J. Blige. That's what I was trying to do, right? So he's like, you have to join my choir because that will help you to get it together, and you're too loud. He's like, you're a soloist, and so you got to learn to blend. And I appreciate that time so much because it was the closest thing I ever got to training. So I had to join the choir, be in the choir for a whole year. Then I came out for the a cappella group the next year, and I got in, and I was hyped. So I was able to kind of continue my craft all throughout my education just for fun. Shout out to Pandemonium. I was in the a cappella group at the University of Maryland, College Park. And so I did it because I loved it. There was no goal of like, oh, I'm going to be on TV or any of those things. And then making the band just happened. It just happened.
So can you let's talk a little bit about that, right? Like, how did they find you? Did you find them, right? Like, how did that opportunity come about? And tell us about that first interaction, whether it was a phone call or a message, like whatever that was. What were you feeling at that moment?
Yeah, so no, they ain't going out and finding people. They got plenty of people who want to be famous. So my mom called me. This was the end of my freshman year. Now I'm like first generation college student. I'm hyped, right? And I was wilding. Like I was having a little too much fun. So I'm like, this is working out for me. And my mom called and is like, Diddy's having auditions for making a band. Now, prior to this, I had seen the band. Like I saw when it was Choppa and all of them wilding and having a good time. That was very, very entertaining. Babs, Sarah, okay, they had a little singer. She was really good. So I remembered that. And so I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? She's like, no, this past season, he had a bunch of singers. He's trying to make a singing group, but he wasn't happy with them. I had not watched that prior season because like I said, I was in college wilding. So my mom's like, and she's my biggest fan. So she's like, you got to go out to these auditions. You're the best. You're going to do. And I'm like, girl, no. Told y'all, Kipp connection. I had, through Kipp, gotten an internship in California, working for Wells Fargo. I was hyped. I was supposed to be making money. I was like, girl, no. We're not doing no auditions. She begged me. Please just go to the auditions. So I went into it with the state of mind, like my mom's not gonna leave me alone unless I go to these auditions. But if y'all, I mean, on everything I love, there's no way I could have ever imagined making it past the first audition and then through an entire season. It just wasn't in my mind. Like I had no training. I had no, you know what I mean? Like it just wasn't that. So I show up to the Washington, D.C. auditions and there are 1,000 girls there. And I'm like, I'm ready to turn around and go home. I'm like, what's the point? This is crazy. Do the audition, no idea how, but I make it to the second day. 100 from 1,000, they chose 100 girls to come back for callbacks the next day. And I make it through that. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I got to figure it out. And so call my mentor. I'm like, I got this opportunity because after I made it through that round, they're like, well, now we're going around the country doing the rest of our auditions. So you just got to wait. We'll call you and we'll bring everybody to New York to audition in front of Diddy. And that's when they'll decide who actually made it into the house. So there was this lull. And during that period, I had to miss my internship in California. So I'm like, man, okay, this sucks. Hope I make it because now I'm just sitting on my tush at home. So get to New York, audition for Diddy. I was the last name he called. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. You go back and rewatch it. I made it through the skin of my teeth because from the beginning, they were like, girl, you can't dance. Girl, you too fat. So it was very much like the last name he called me BX from the beginning, which I will say any negative thing anybody's got to say about Diddy, I, in hindsight, really appreciate the fact that he gave me the nickname BX because of all the pride for my borough. But last name that was called, I couldn't believe it. And so that's how it started. And every week when they were making those cuts, I just thought I was on the chopping block. I really still, 15 years later, I'm like, how did I make it through a whole season?
So what was the experience like week to week? Did you ever get to interact with Diddy? Like, what was the whole like situation like?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So we spent a summer down in Soho. They had us up in a penthouse right on Green Street. But it was, this why the rich stay rich, because all the furniture was from IKEA. It was it's so funny what they can do, how they can make things on TV. It's real funny. But anyway, so every week, so it was like you spend the whole week practicing, right? They'll maybe give you a task and say, this is the song you guys should be working on, or this is the task. And at some point, Diddy's gonna show up and want to see your progress. That was the kind of scope of it. And so he would randomly show up. He would walk into the house and we knew something crazy was about to happen, or he'd be like, see y'all tonight, you better be ready. A lot of it was dramatics, let's be real. We didn't see him that often. It was like maybe once a week. And it was when he was ready to like make a cut. So you get to know these girls. It's really tough because people are getting cut. So you like meet this person from California or this person who you're like, oh, they're so cool, they're so talented. And then they're gone. And you're like, okay. And it's so interesting because like I said, I went into it not having a goal, but then when you get into it and you're in this grueling process, you're like, okay, well now I want to make it because I'm here and I'm doing all of this. And so I it's interesting. I was probably 50 pounds lighter than I am now at that time. And there was a lot of conversation about my weight, which is, I weighed 120 pounds, 120, 115 and 120 at the time. But what people don't realize, the girls that were on that show with me, not all of them, but a lot of them, some of them had been singers and dancers for professional teams, like the Charlotte Horn. I don't know the names of, don't laugh at me because I don't know anything about sports. So let me not I can say the Yankees in the Bronx. That's a team I know is in the Bronx. It is the Yankees. So boom, like a lot of them were professional background singers, professional background dancers for Justin Timberlake, for Diddy, so there were some professionals there who, a lot of them were tall, real skinny, size 2, 0. And so I guess next to them, I didn't really, fit the mold. And so there was just a lot of focus on that. Obviously the focus on my dancing, which I now tell people is so funny because like I said, my dad was a professional background dancer for Houdini. So I mean, we know who Houdini, right? And still people see Houdini and are like, oh, I know him. And so it's so shameful and hilarious that I couldn't get the choreography because I felt like my dad's like, really? But anyway, so I was riding on my singing. That was the thing. Lorianne would say, girl, you lucky you could sing because you cannot dance and save your life. And so it was a good experience. We had a lot of fun. But there were aspects of it that were traumatic when I talk about the weight and I talk about just the focus on like, be perfect, or you're getting cut. Like that culture was like a lot. What else can I say? Diddy, I felt, he's smart. And I think that he knew how to turn it on for the cameras in a way that has made him who he is today. So like not in no shady way, but just like, saying the stuff that sounds scary. You better pull it together, doing the dramatic stuff. And so it made for good TV. People really do have a lot of fond memories of Making the Band and of Dave Chappelle making fun of Making the Band and all of those things. So yeah, I get to the end. That singing sequence, the day that happened was really funny because I knew something was up. Like maybe a day or two prior to the Deborah Cox moment, I was crying on camera because we were like having a heart to heart. The girls were, and I'm just like, man, every week we making cuts based on the dance. When we gonna make some cuts based on the singing? Like this ain't fair. And I had this long motivational conversation with Andre Harrell, God rest his soul. He's like, you talented. Like you just got to do the thing. Just do what you do. And so Diddy shows up at the penthouse and is like, y'all been working so hard. You get a night off, a night on me. Red flag. I was like, red flag. This for TV. Something ain't right. And he's like, take them out, Lorianne. Take them out on the town. We were in Miami. And he's like, I want them partying, having a good time. Because this is y'all earned it. Halfway through the night at the club, Lorianne gets a phone call. She was very staged. And she's like, no. And so she turns to us and she's like, girls, Diddy wants everybody in the studio right now. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning. Girls had been drinking. I mean, it was like, surprise. So we show up at the studio and he gives us this spiel about how, yeah, this is the industry. Like basically saying, yes, I set you up because when you're a professional singer or dancer or whatever, it's going to be that. It's going to be middle of the night calls to go to the studio, drop everything and go. And that was the night where he switched it up. We danced. I did a terrible job. And then he was like, surprise, we also do a singing cut. And I was like, yes, ooh, 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 I got a moment to shine here. And what happened was, Diddy will tell you how he feels. And so you get 10 seconds in and he'd be like, thank you. Bye, and I was like, no, not tonight. I was like, I'm gonna sing my song. And what I was saying to myself is, I'm gonna finish this part. I'm gonna get to the high note. And if he said, go home because you think you could just do what you want to do, then I'm gonna go home. And so I start singing, I close my eyes and I just keep singing. And and so when I stopped, when he said, hey, I literally thought he was about to be like, who do you think you are singing that long? Go home. And so I was so shocked. He's like, oh, can't believe you could do that. Can't send nobody home. Like I was like, okay, well that worked out because I was ready to put it all on the line and get kicked out just because I'm a sing. So it was a moment. There's nothing I could have done to predict that would be like a huge moment in pop culture. You know what I mean?
Iconic.
Like
an iconic
crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I can't say that, but you can say that. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. That's it. It's nostalgia for me because I definitely watched Making the Band like religiously. So this is actually really cool for me. So I want to talk about the Deborah Cox challenge. It went viral recently. Shade Room, it was kind of everywhere. So I guess tell us about that moment. And for me, that song is really special. That's actually one of my favorites. I had it on so I was kind of cheap, so I didn't buy the cassette, but I had like a blank cassette. So when it would come on the radio, so now I'm dating myself. When it would come on the radio, you would like hit record. Hopefully you get it from the very beginning. If not, you gotta try again.
I used to do it too.
So that's one of the songs.
You could tell me I wasn't a DJ.
There you go. So Nobody's Supposed to Be Here by Deborah Cox is actually a song that I had on a cassette tape that I recorded myself. So that song is very special to me.
That's hilarious.
So seeing you kill that challenge meant a lot. So can you talk a little bit about how that moment happened and how things have changed for you since it went viral?
Yeah. So they have the range. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's an awesome, awesome Instagram page that where this guy literally just showcases all sorts of singers, amateur singers, everything, people, regular people, celebrities, just people who sing well. And so he does these challenges all the time where it's like, okay, we're going to do the Brandy challenge. We're going to do this and puts these kind of parameters in place. Like you can choose from these songs, you can do this part of the song, that part of the song, and just whatever he likes, he'll post. And so I followed the page because I think it's awesome, but I wasn't like paying attention. I told you I opened in school, I'm new mom, and I'm doing all these things. And so I start getting these dings on Instagram, just tags. I don't know what's happening. And so I open it up and he has created this Deborah Cox challenge. And so a bunch of people had commented remembering me and being like, how y'all gonna do a Deborah Cox challenge without Dominique? Like, where's Dominique? All these things that made me feel so flattered and warm in my heart. And so then he reached out to me directly, sent me a DM and said, they're not gonna stop blowing me up until you do something. So I need a song. I need a video from you. And I just was like, wow, just that moment for me is like, Making the Band was 15 years ago, y'all. And so it's just such a beautiful feeling that people still remember you. They thinking about you. They remember your voice. They remember that moment. So I'm like, of course I'll do a little video for the thing. Who knows if it's even going to be good enough for this thing, but whatever. Let's see if I still got it. And so I decided to incorporate my daughters because they're my favorite thing going on right now. I'm hoping to get some vocalists out of them. I sing to them all the time. So they were eating dinner and I told my husband to just throw on the camera. I'm gonna do this challenge real quick. And I'm talking about, it was no makeup involved. I probably had on a sweatshirt, headscarf, all that. And I just sang the part. And it's funny because I recorded it 3 times and there was one that sounded better, right? Like those notes are hard notes. So Dominique, I don't even care about flat, sharp, all that. I'ma just sing. But I recorded it. One was better vocally, but when I look back at the one I ended up sending, the girls were so into it. They were like, bobbing their heads, and I sang no, and one of them shaking their head no, and I was like, this is it. I was like, because the interaction with the girls was just the most fun. So I posted it on my daughter's Instagram page, the Mejia twins, and then shared it with They Have the Range. And when he posted it, I mean, it was really They Have the Range putting it up is what made that happen. It got like 40 something thousand hits on that page. And then folks, fans, people, friends, family, everybody just started sharing with the Shade Room and all these other platforms. And I wake up, I remember, I don't know what my mama did. My mama had did something, I was frustrated with her. And then I hang up the phone with her and 2 seconds later, she's called me back. And I'm like, she called me back to apologize and I don't want to talk to her. But I pick up the phone anyway because it's your mama. And she's like, girl, you on that Shade Room. And I'm like, what? And I open it up. I could not believe it. I was so grateful for that moment.
I was just gonna say it was funny because when I first saw the video, I must have saw it when it first came out. Cause I was like, I was saying to Jay, I was like, we should have her on the show. And then just life happened or whatever. And then it was like a day later, you had like 15,000. I was like, oh, she's not going to do our show no more.
Yo, that is literally how the conversation went.
Wow. First of all, anything for the Bronx. Anything for the Bronx.
We appreciate it. it. So before we let you go, I'm going to shoot my shot. I have to ask, any chance we can get you to bless us with a couple of notes, whatever you want to sing, if you choose to sing. Deborah Cox, just asking.
Definitely not Deborah Cox. I am so Deborah Cox out, no shade, because she got me to where I am. Sis, I appreciate you and I appreciate the song because it created that moment for me in history. But when it's a hard song. Doesn't nobody want to be singing them hard notes all the time. Let's see. Man, I love Jasmine Sullivan. I bust the windows out your car. I'm trying to think of where I could come from in it. Mom, help me out. What's the bridge to bust your windows? Oh, my daughters just woke up. Y'all should see that.
Oh.
To think of how you feel when you saw it. I didn't know that I had that much strength. But I'm glad you see what happens when you see you can't just play with people's feelings. Tell them you love them and don't mean it. You'll probably say that it was juvenile, but I think that I deserve to smile. Put the windows on out your car, but it don't compare to my broken heart. You could never feel how I felt that day. Until it happens, baby, you don't know pain. Oh, yeah, I did it. You should know it. I'm sorry. You deserved it. After what you did to me, said you deserved it. I'm sorry. No. You broke my heart. You caused me pain. That's what I got.
Yo, they and listen. This was not rehearsed. She didn't know what was gonna happen. And we're about to get a cameo from the twins.
Yeah. You know, my babies, man. My babies, they just woke up. You know, they might have the coal in the eyes, but that would be a good way to end.
No worries. We got to get them on camera.
Hi. Say hey, mama. So their names are Nola and Naila.
Nola and Naila.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is Nola. Look,
Hey,
say hi.
Nola.
Nola, say hi.
What's up?
Nola, welcome to Live from the Bronx.
Oh,
Hey.
you
gotta start making
Gave him
baby
away.
shirts. Live from the Bronx, like baby shirts.
Nana,
Yeah, that's next. Hey,
Nola and Naila.
what's up, y'all?
Hi.
For just waking up, they're mad alert. And they're waving.
Yeah, she's giving you the wave.
Hey,
I love it.
the celebrity wave.
Yeah.
So Dominique and the Mejia twins, thank you so much. And mom in the background singing as well.
They said her mom in the background singing as well.
Yeah, we caught those notes too.
Yeah, we're leaving all of that in, by the way.
Do it.
We just want to say thank you. We really appreciate you spending time and kicking it with us. You have so many dope things happening in your personal life and your professional life, and you're repping the Bronx to the core. So we appreciate you, and we wish you much success. This has been a really dope interview and a really dope time. I had fun, and thank you for being dope. And please continue to.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I hope I can stay in touch with you all. Y'all are doing amazing things too.
For sure. We'll definitely make this happen, exchange contact, stay in contact. Definitely we'll continue to love to build.
No doubt. So episode 32. We did it, y'all.
Yay. Ladies, they did it. We did it.